My name is Greg Woodburn, and I'm an MBA student at USC Marshall and the organizer of tonight's event. I'd like to take a moment to thank the many people who have made tonight possible. First of all, thank you to our speakers for generously making time to share your experiences with us. I'd like to thank Hannah Wynn and the entire EdMonth team for your generous support and guidance the entire way. And tonight would not be possible without our generous co-sponsors, the Graduate Student Government, Undergraduate Student Government, Program Board, the Academic Culture Assembly, the Office of Religious Life, and the Brittingham Social Enterprise Lab. Lastly, I want to give a special thanks to my sister for being here tonight. You're my best friend. And everyone benefits when girls receive quality education in the U.S. and abroad. While recent milestones, such as Malala Yousafzai's selection for the Nobel Peace Prize, represent a growing awareness of why girls' education is important, the challenge now is to scale how we achieve the girl effect. And I am delighted to introduce two leaders who are empowering girls to break cycles of intergenerational poverty through education. You all come down and join us now? Awesome. Martha Adams is an award-winning storyteller and photographer who travels freely between the realms of television, independent filmmaking, and all things social media. Originally brought on to produce the film at the center of the Girl Rising campaign, of which you saw one of the chapters, she is now the organization's Chief Creative Officer. In 2013, Martha was named to Newsweek's list of 125 Women of Impact. And Martha has an incredible legacy so that audiences can enjoy her documentaries in more than 188 countries across the globe. Melissa Morris is the Vice President of STEM and Education Initiatives at Teach for America. After graduating from MIT with a BS in biology, Melissa joined the Teach for America Corps as a middle school science teacher at MS 321 in New York City. In 2008, she joined Teach for America's staff as the recruitment director for Boston area schools. Melissa was recently named one of the 100 women leaders in STEM by STEM Connector. She believes passionately that all children deserve the opportunity to experience the wonders of math and science. And our moderator tonight is Abby Fifer Mandell, the executive director of the Brittingham Social Enterprise Lab. She oversees all BSEL staff, academic offerings, and other initiatives. She teaches the popular undergraduate course, Social Innovation Design Lab, in which interdisciplinary teams of students use design thinking to create product solutions to poverty. Abby received her master's degree in education administration and her BA from the University of Virginia. She also serves on the board of Question Box, a hardware and helpline solution that connects people in remote villages around the world. Abby will lead the discussion with Martha and Melissa, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So please join me in welcoming our esteemed guests.
Thank you so much, Greg. And to all the team that's working on EdMonth all around campus, it's a wonderful way to engage the community. I want to start by saying how incredibly honored I am to get to be with you, extraordinary women, tonight, not only to talk about... I just talk so loud, you never know. It's just very softly.
Oh no, it's not there.
Nobody heard all the nice things I just said? Let me say it again. Just bring it close.
Okay.
We do a lot of work here to try and inspire students to imagine ways that what they're learning on campus can impact the world, and you guys are getting to be in that world right now and do that extraordinary work. So it's a joy to get to be with you, and thank you for your time, whether coming from close or from far. It's a really big deal to our community, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit, just to start out, to have you, Martha and Melissa, talk a little bit about what drew you to this work, the work of education, the work of girls and women, And in particular, if you could share a little bit about your journey to the particular organizations that we're with right now. Why don't we start with So I grew up in a super nerdy household. My mom was a middle school math teacher and my dad is an engineer. And so we did not come to the dinner table for fun. We did not talk about like color days or politics or any of that like other people who I knew in school did. And so from a very young age, I loved math and science, was encouraged and nurtured at home, but also at school. And so in 7th grade, I found out about something called biology. And I had a 7th grade teacher, Mrs. Schwartz, who said, Melissa, you seem to really love this subject. Have you thought about science? And I said, no, not really, but yeah, this seems awesome. And so I ended up in college and was a biology major and was pre-med. And like I told people earlier, if you had asked me my senior year of college what I wanted to do, I would have told you that I love science, I want to work with kids, and I want to make an impact. So everybody told me to go to medical school. And so I took the MCAT, all the things you're supposed to do for pre-med. And I got to senior year and I said, I just don't know if I want to be a doctor. And I went to a Teach for America information session and I heard about the opportunity to work in education and particularly to work in low-income communities and share my love of science with the next generation. And I said, this seems more like what I want to do. So I ended up packing up my bags and moving to New York and teaching 7th and 8th grade science in New York. I always had a special place in my heart for all of the girls in my classroom, given the fact that I was teaching 7th grade, which was the very year that Mrs. Schwartz impacted me and said, hey, have you ever thought about science? So I tried to do that very same thing with a lot of the girls in my class. And I had some great stories come out of it. Some kids said, no, absolutely not. And others said, yeah, I really love that. This is great. And so after my time in the classroom, I joined Teach for America's recruitment team and moved back to Boston, which was home. And the reason I joined our recruitment team was because one of the things I saw in my school was that even in the middle of New York City, we did not have enough people to teach math and science subjects who had math and science background. We had vacancies throughout the year. The year before I taught my group of students, they had 5 6th grade math teachers. They ended up being taught by the dean that year. And it really struck me that no one had told me about science education as a path, and I wanted to make sure that that was not true for other people who were studying math, science, and engineering in school. So I worked on a recruitment team for a few years, and then switched over into the role that I'm in now, where I oversee our national STEM education initiative. So I have the privilege of working with our 3,500 STEM teachers across the country in our 50 different regional sites to connect them with great tools, resources, and opportunities, and share more about the world of STEM. But ultimately, it started as doing nerdy math problems on car rides and at my dinner table. So, yeah. Oh, there's so many.
I know. I have to. Where to go?
I'm going to continue being awkward.
You asked how we were talking about girls' education. Honestly, I did not know that that's where I was headed. I've been making documentaries for my entire career. Most of them were for the BBC and National Geographic and Discovery Channel, and that's a very male demo. And so I was constantly having to come up with ideas and topics for what we call Joe's Six-Pack. So that usually involved science, war, bombs, architecture, engineering, things that blew up, things that fell down, all kinds of things like that. So that was the bulk of my career. In between, though, I always made time to make films about women, and they were pretty hairy topics. I made a film where I lived on the border of the U.S.-Mexican border and tracked the disappearance of women who were working in the factories. And I had a chance to work on a film called Playground, which is on the trafficking of children here in the United States. And over the years, I just became incredibly conscious of the inequalities between men and women. And yet, if I went into the television executive's office and said, I have this great idea for a film about women or a TV show about women, they would always say, you should really go work for Oprah. And I was like, I don't want to work for Oprah. I want to make a documentary. So over time, people started to realize my passion, and then Girl Rising was first one that I got to talk. Wonderful.
So, how much of your work, both of you, has spent familiarizing yourself with the subject matter versus relying on other people to bring the subject matter to you?
That's a good question. So I would say there's always sort of a combination of both, and relying on versus sort of acquiring it really depends on what the context is for me. So I have been looked at, quote unquote, as a STEM expert, and I hate the term expert, so I do not really love that label, but that is oftentimes what people within our regional teams or on our who are teaching will come to me and say, what should I be doing in STEM? And then I start asking them a whole ton of questions, and they're like, no, I just want the answer. That's not the way that this fully works. So I feel like I am immersed in the content area of STEM education, which has a lot to, I mean, there have been many, many conversations about women in STEM. How do we get more young women and girls studying STEM, and what can we do? How do we change, whether it's coursework or change the way we talk about it, or thinking through things like role models and mentorship and lots of really important topics. I think the angle that I came at actually the women in STEM conversation is I did approach myself in that conversation because I was very fortunate and grew up where I just never thought that it wasn't an option to be a girl in science. And that it was totally cool for me to be a super nerd, and that was really embraced in my household and amongst my peer group, and I felt very, very lucky. So I had to really immerse myself in, like, what does the research say about women in STEM and working with young girls in STEM, and how can I connect that research and what things, to the practice of then STEM teaching and then help our kids. But it really, I think it depends on what area. I have personal experiences, but I view myself as a constant learner and like to be a teacher. Like always learning from other people and their experiences and their context, because everything looks different everywhere. And just because I'm an expert of my own experiences doesn't mean that I'm an expert of anybody else's.
Let's see. When we were first approached to make Girl Rising, the question that was first presented to us was, we want to make a film about how to end global poverty. So what do you think we should do? And I honestly had no idea. I mean, I'll throw it back at all of you. If you were asked to make a film, you can't leave tonight without deciding how to make a film that shows the universe how to end global poverty. We had no clue, so we did what any good documentarian does, which is you just call all the really smart people at places like USC and you ask them. So in that case, we ended up at the United Nations, we ended up at the State Department, we ended up at Davos, we kind of blanketed the world. And it was really, really interesting because we spoke to experts in HIV transmission and malaria and clean water and access to healthcare. And they would state their case about how to end global poverty, but at the end of the conversation, they would kind of wink and say, by the way, have you seen the numbers coming in on girls' head? And I had no idea what they were even referencing. This was about 6 years ago. And so, so that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, but the timing was really fortuitous because there was a lot of amazing research that came in about 6 years ago that led us to say, oh my God, this is what the film has got to be about.
And so your film really focuses, and the campaign is very specific about focusing on women and girls outside of the U.S. in particular. Can you talk a little bit about why you made that choice, and what you want people to know about making that choice in that particular mission?
Yeah, really popular question. The film is dedicated to the 62 million girls who are missing from classrooms. And they're missing because of barriers that prevent them from being there, like the story that you just saw. And in the United States, there really aren't barriers that prevent girls from going to school that are based on their gender. There are lots of young women who don't make it to school because maybe the economics of their household. But barring girls from school in the United States because their girls really does not exist at the level at a level where the numbers are significant. If anything, we're seeing that the graduation rates out of high school now for girls are surpassing boys, and also at the college level, not in STEM, but in the other areas. So that was, that's not to say there aren't like incredible stories that can be told here in the United States. So that was looking through. Makes more sense. Good.
Well, from your side, Melissa, of course, Teach for America is U.S. based, and you're fighting a bit of a different battle. And of course, there are, as Martha's almost alluded to, there are critics in this country that say we took the scale. We focused so much on STEM education and girls' education, especially in primary school, that now boys are at risk. Terrible things are happening for boys in the classroom. Sounds like you may have heard arguments like that before. How do you respond to that?
I mean, I think it's just so interesting to watch how the pendulum can swing dramatically, and like there's just a lot of fear-based conversation that is out there around like this group is, and now we solved that problem, and now this is and the thing I don't love about that particular statement is that it implies that it's an either or. And it's not, it's a both and. There are so many amazing techniques and strategies that when you use them with all kids, they learn better. And really thinking about what a high quality education looks like is meeting the needs of every child in your classroom. And it has nothing to do with race or socioeconomic class or gender. It has everything to do with who that kid is and how they learn best. And so the reason that I giggled is because I don't think it's a choice. We have to make sure that all of our kids have access and take advantage of the opportunities so that they can achieve the dreams that are theirs. And like I don't want to make that trade-off. And so I think while there are important things like looking at data to make sure that we're not missing things that are happening, it shouldn't be a choice. We shouldn't focus on one group at the expense of others. I think we should really look at how we can empower everyone to be successful.
Which really speaks to having both of you guys here tonight. We care about education outside the U.S. and we don't care about education in the U.S. We care about children who are able to go to school in this country. Doesn't mean that we also don't care about the children who don't have access to those classroom spaces.
Right, and I would even say, so we have an umbrella organization called Teach for All. It's a network of 40 different Teach for countries. So in places like India and, we just launched it, the UK and many others, they're recruiting people to be teachers from those local countries to then serve in their highest need communities. And we have learned really important lessons as Teach for America from many of those other countries and their founding and what their unique context looks like. And so I think there's a lot to be learned. And I just think like when we put up walls and saying we focus on girls' education means we're not focusing on boys, we miss the opportunity to learn from each other about, okay, what worked really well for this particular context, what works well here. And I just think there's a lot that can be learned from that intersection.
So to put you on the spot then, could you share an example of something that really does work in this country or in another country?
Yeah, I would be happy to. From the perspective of women in STEM, one of the things, so there's been a lot of great research that's come out recently, so the Girl Scouts actually just did a really great report that if you're interested in reading, I highly recommend. And they're working to actually shift a lot of their focus towards STEM education as well with some of their programs. But the focus on, oftentimes in school, particularly in college, you have to get to the very advanced courses to figure out how you apply the content that you're learning to actually do things with it. And if you flip that paradigm on its head for girls, girls want to see how is this relevant? How can I impact the world through the knowledge of this? And so there have been some universities, Brittingham and many others that are doing great work to actually flip that paradigm of making it the entry-level courses that focus on things like how do we design a solution to this particular problem and really to start engaging students earlier. And I think that works in the pre-K through 12 space as well. When you focus on problem-based learning, girls tend to do better. So, yeah.
I think about that all the time, and I think, and I went to a specialized high school for math and science, which especially because I was a B student that then I was really good at college. But I often think how much better my life would have been if I had financial literacy as a high school student as opposed to discrete math, which I actually, if anyone knows what discrete math is, I could explain it to me. It's just most of my adult life, and I still don't fully understand what it is, but perhaps that was a STEM happening there. I want to turn that same question back to you, Martha. Could you share an example of an intervention that really is working that you've seen in your work?
Sure. We just watched one in the chapter. So Co-Rising is comprised of 9 chapters, and each chapter shines a light on a different program that works to intervene and empower girls through different programs. So in this program, so this is a very, very successful program in a section of Nepal that offers girls who've been rescued out of slavery, and they provide them what's called a social mobilizer. So that's basically a life coach. The woman that appeared in the film is an actual social mobilizer. She was a victim of slavery herself. And you know, the program is everything from I'm going to provide this girl a bicycle because she lives too far and otherwise not get to school. We're going to pay for her uniform. Here's a backpack to make sure that there's paper and pencils inside. And then we're also going to make sure that she has somebody to talk to, and that she has a club, an after-school club that she can go to talk to other girls just like herself, and that the conversation at the club is tailored to her. And so in Suna's case, you know, she was sold at age 6. She was sold twice more, reunited with her mother at age 12. At age 12, she no longer spoke her parents' language. She couldn't make eye contact. She was basically a totally broken individual. And today, you know, she was just on the cover of the Kathmandu Times. I mean, she's leading movement to end indentured servitude. She was at she performed that song at Lincoln Center. She stood next to Hillary Clinton and on the street. And afterwards, I was talking to her. I was like, "Oh my God, Suna, this is amazing!" And like, how do you explain this? And she kind of thought long and hard about it. And she said, "You know, I guess I'm the change. It's me." And I said, "Well, don't you think that's remarkable? Because this is stopping the cycle of poverty in a very short period of time." As if for example, and she still wasn't with me, you know. And I said, "Well, let's put it this way. How old was your mom when she got married?" She said she was 9. I said, "Well, how old do you want to be when you get married?" She's like, "I don't know, maybe 25. Well, how many kids did your mother have? 10. How many do you want? Maybe 2. You know, does your mom, can she write? No, she can't even hold a pencil. What did your mom dream of becoming when she was young? You have any dreams? What do you want to dream? What do you want to be? I want to be a nurse." So, extraordinary intervention, extraordinary success. Most of the time we don't hear about it because it doesn't appear about the old, you know, it's not a travesty, it's not a tragedy. But the truth is there's just lots and lots of exciting programs out there that are truly working.
So how many of these stories are exceptions, the positive outliers? Like on our side, this is something that's insane. Change is amazing, it's happening now, this is a generation. People in other parts of the world, people in Nepal, do they feel that movement too? Or is this an isolated group of people that's getting to experience that really high-touch kind of intervention program?
It depends on the place. Nepal is faring very well. Of course, we all know that there's like entire regions of India where girls are not doing well. Certainly Pakistan, Yemen, Nepal, northern Nigeria. We all know what that looks like. So I don't mean to at all oversimplify. So it really, really depends on the region, and it depends on how many sectors of society are working together to enable a transformative environment. And that's really quite key. But you know, even in India, I was not long ago in a region in southern India that had the highest rates of HIV transmission in all of India. It was like a mining district, you know, where trucks and semis are going in all directions, and AIDS was just rampant. And they tried everything to curb the transmission, and they finally went through girls' education. And they just closed down their office. They had such a high success. Transmission now is down to like less than 0.2%. So there are lots of examples.
Phenomenal. So you talked about the importance of multiple sectors working together and stakeholders working together. I wanted to ask, I'm sure you've also experienced that within your work. How important is it that organizations work together? Are there some sectors in terms of policy or business or NGOs or government that you see as particularly meaningful in this conversation? What does it look like to try and organize change when you have to bring all those people together?
Yeah, I've always been talking a lot about this concept of building empathy and how important it is when you have lots of people coming together from very different perspectives and very different backgrounds, very different sectors. Can be really interesting to just like sit back and watch because the conversation, it's hard to understand the perspectives of others without having walked in their shoes. I believe very deeply that to think about the challenge of educational inequity in this country, it is going to take every sector, every industry. It is going to take different policy. It is going to take different priorities of elected officials. It is going to take advocacy. It's going to take top down and bottom up. It's going to take parents and families and students and communities all coming together and deciding what the priorities and it's a national challenge, a global challenge, but with very local solutions. And so I think that there's lots of, I've been very fortunate to sit in many rooms from a STEM perspective. There are people who are working to come together to really organize around how do we fix this challenge? How do we make sure that anyone who wants to study STEM in this country has the opportunity and that they're actively encouraged to do so? I think there's still a long way to go because it's very hard to drop your ego at the door. Also very hard to drop your organizational affiliation at the door when you're working in large groups and large coalitions of individuals. And I think some of the most successful conversations that I've been in is where I both feel valued as an individual and my own perspective and who I, as Melissa Morris, am bringing to what I am bringing to the table. And then also then thinking about what can I do as a result of what organization I work for and what we as an organization do best. And so I just, I really deeply believe that it is going to take everyone coming together. I think that there are a lot of challenges in that because there's a lot of tension in terms of just working in large groups can be really hard. Amplify working in a group project. Like I talk to so many college students and I think about my own experiences. Working in a group project is really hard. It's like one person feels like they're doing all the work and the other person feels like they're not heard, and then like there's inevitably drama that happens in every group project. But there's also like the most amazing opportunities for learning and getting to understand the perspectives of others and being curious and asking questions. And like, I wonder why so-and-so is approaching it that way, or like, I wonder why they aren't coming to the group meetings. Like maybe I scheduled it during their, field hockey practice or whatever. Like there's just lots of really interesting things that if you start, I think the key is being curious and also then having empathy and seeking as best as possible to understand the perspectives of others.
I'm not sure you have similar experiences. Let's see. Yes. So that was a beautiful answer.
Who
I have
needs
to say.
love working with? Your
Oh my God. Well, we work, so Grow Rising has become kind of ground central in some ways for the movement to empower girls. So on any given day, we're creating design assets, communications assets for, it could be from the Lawless team, it could be for the families whose daughters have been kidnapped in Nigeria. We handle most of their social media. So we have a wide variety of players that are kind of orbiting, and we're constantly connecting the dots and having to deal with organizations and affiliations and everybody's different call to action, which is just a term that's constantly used right now. What's the call to action? What's the call to action? What's the call to action? But the Grow Rising model does not do anything without all of our kind of already lined up. So we're getting ready to launch Girl Rising India. And, you know, we made sure that, you know, at the party was the head of Google and was all the Bollywood's biggest stars, and then the head of the best, you know, nonprofits in all of India, and, you know, the new president. And we just, you know, every box needs to be checked. If you're aiming really, really high, you got to make friends with everybody.
Great, nice. How do you prepare yourself for some of those conversations? Like when you walk into a meeting with the folks at Google, do you have to, as most indicated, kind of consider the language, consider the conversation, think about their priorities, or do you just say, look, this is what we're trying to achieve, we put it on the table, please join us?
You know, you have to think, it's the empathy thing. You have to see the world through their lens, or else you're going to walk out of the meeting and not have accomplished anything. So, you know, I just got a call from Caterpillar, the construction company, the CEO. They wanted to get involved, and you're like, okay, wait a second, what's the connection point here? But usually you find it. You know, Charles Schwab, who knew that a banking institution would be so passionate about girls' education. Now all the branches of Charles Schwab are turning into kind of community centers that are engaging around all of our content. But you just need to find that sweet spot and then talk in their language. It can be a little bit, you know, for me, I've never worked with banking, so it can take a little bit of time to figure out how to you know, make their eyes sparkle, but you will fail if you can't.
Well, I mean, I definitely agree in terms of thinking about things from other people's perspectives. I also think that there's no substitute in life for personal relationships. And so when I'm approaching meetings, whether it's with an individual teacher or with a university, you know, faculty member, or with a company, or with, you know, lots of different, very different perspectives, very different experiences, but I tend to spend the first part of any meeting just like, being humans with each other and like talking about things like, where did you grow up and go to school, what's important in your life, and like trying to, you know, find that common connection as people first. And then, you know, obviously I've done my homework and I've researched what their mission is and what they're interested in, and I ask them questions about like what are their priorities, what's most important to them, and try to have a better sense, and then think about the things that, like, why would you want to be working with me? So me as an individual and Teach for America as an organization, what could we do together that would be really powerful and really aligned to the work that we want to be doing and also the work we want to be doing. So I think it's finding that synergy, but I would just say, I just don't think there's a substitute for the personal relationship piece, and oftentimes the places where we've had the strongest partnerships have become because we've had the strongest personal relationships to start. And you can have partnerships without having relationships, and you can have relationships that don't turn into partnerships, but I just I believe that the strongest ones that I've had anyway have been where I also have a personal relationship with those.
So, I am very interested in maternal health outcomes, and a lot of issues related to the moms of babies around the world. So I have a country crush on Norway. Are there places in the world that outside of the U.S. that you think they are really nailing it? They are understanding the issues of women and girls. They're taking care of STEM education. They're responding to the issues. What's your country crush?
I mean, there are countries that are doing great things with STEM education. I have a hard time answering, or thinking about, answering the question, because I don't always believe that just because something's working well in another place, because like we can just take that and then replicate it here, and like we just made that one policy, it would fix the problem. Because I think like those policies are in place, or the ways that things are being successful is because of a whole lot of different factors, and it would be hard to like isolate certain things. I was really compelled. I sat down with the folks at Singapore Math, and I was really just blown away by the conversations I had with them that like 10 years ago, they decided they wanted to be #1 in life sciences. They decided. And so they made every textbook focus on life sciences, math textbook, ELA textbook, everything, which they can do because they're a tiny country and they have that governance structure. But like 7 years later, they were #1 in life sciences. And I thought that blew my mind. That like, sit down, talk about a goal, we all have this goal, we're all gonna come together and figure it out, and then they did it. And it just, yeah, I don't know if that's a crush, but I just thought that was really a neat conversation, and very different from the ones I had here.
You don't have to use the word crush. That's how I talk, but you can use like positive exemplar or something like that.
But then that would be no fun. I guess the crush, I'm gonna go with crush. Would, in my case, apply more to some of the nonprofits that I've worked with. So Partners in Health, for example, they're our partner for Grow Rising in Haiti. And so I had a chance to see their programs up close. And, I walked away a different person, certainly because of their innovative work. If I was your age, I would go with Partners in Health in a second. And then, but there are other programs. I don't know if any of you sort of craft them. They're kind of shaking up India in a phenomenal way. So much so that you can just walk into any kind of Pratham school in India and it's palpable. You just know that the kids in this classroom are going to walk out the door and lead India in a whole new direction. So that would be where I park.
So as we, I'm going to ask a couple more questions and then we'll move into a lot of time for the audience to ask questions. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the culture of the organization that you work at. So what does a great day look like in your office? What are your staff meetings like? What do you celebrate over? How do you know what is a good week in your office, a good day, a good hour? What does that look like and how do you and your team respond to that?
Yeah, so our team, we have about 2,000 employees, our Teach for America's staff, and those are spread across people who work on national teams as well as people who work locally in regions supporting the teachers who are on the ground teaching in those places. And so I work on a national team, and so I have colleagues who are in Milwaukee and the Bay Area and DC and Baltimore and everywhere in between. And so we do a lot of work virtually, we do a lot of work over the phone, and we do a lot of work through Skype and WebEx and all of that. In terms of and I think having a virtual work environment has its own unique culture that is really interesting. I have the privilege of both having a group of folks who are directly on my team who sit a cubicle away from me. I work cubicles next to like a bench kind of like this, but yes, they work right next to me, and then folks who I see very rarely. I've also had the experience where I email with a bunch of people and I've never actually seen them in person, and so it's this amazing moment where I've envisioned them looking in certain ways, and then I see them in person and they look nothing like what their voice to me would make them look like. It's so fascinating, and I kind of like that. It's very flexible. We have a lot of people work from home. We have people who work part-time. We have great maternity and child care benefits and all sorts of great stuff there. In terms of what a great day looks like within our organization, I think the stuff that gets me super jazzed is the work that's happening on the ground in classrooms that teachers and kids are doing every day. That is stuff that our organization is made of, and the stuff that I just love hearing about. When I hear about a kid who has won a science fair, or someone who is starting an after-school program to bring coding to their school, and it's just blowing people's minds, and they have so much enrollment in South Carolina. It's just awesome to watch. When I hear about a teacher who has just decided that their kids need to be able to have access to an AP course, and so they just started it, and they talked to their administration, they got all the right approvals. I just love the people who I work with, and I love the educators who are in our classrooms, and they probably don't even know who I am, but I love them, and I think they're doing amazing, amazing work and doing incredibly hard work every day, but it is the most important work that I can imagine doing. And so I love hearing about the impact that they're having on their kids and the impact that their kids are having on them, because that's what we're all about.
My my team would laugh so hard if I saw me get this question. I don't know, we have a pretty eccentric office environment. Let's see. I'm old enough to tell you that when I started in this business, everybody had that very discrete jobs. We were compartmentalized. There was the editor and the director and the producer and the this and the that. And now it's like all been put into a blender and mixed up. And now everybody is expected to kind of, this is overstating it, but you need to wear many hats. And so I think that's very exciting for all of you, because I look for people who can move in a fluid way and think in a fluid way and can multitask. And it's not to say that you shouldn't have areas of strength, but it really, really helps to be flexible in your thinking. Another thing that is really important from my point of view is somebody who is well-rounded and passionate, and I have my best designer is the lead singer of a really killer disco band in town, and I have a former world-class downhill ski champion, and we lay flat on the floor when we're tired, and it might be 10 a.m. and we might go outside into nursery or whatever it is, but I think that's really, really important too, especially when you're demanding what is demanded from Rising, which is pretty much 24/7. We don't really have healthcare. We have no maternity. We don't have anything that is that you have. So that's bad. But I do think it's really cool how all of you are so knowledgeable and smart and able in so many different areas of study and life. It's pretty awesome.
So you've led me right to our last question before we open up to the audience, and you kind of touched on it, Martha, but for Melissa also, if you could go back to yourself when you were in the place that the folks in this room are in grad school or undergrad, mostly in their 20s, what are you really glad you did during that time in your life, or what do you really wish you had done?
I am really glad that I went to a Teach for America information session on my way back from office hours, because that has forever changed my life, and my experiences with my kids have forever changed my own life. And I feel confident about Facebook, so I hope that I have touched theirs in either small or large ways. So I'm glad I took that risk, because people told me I was crazy. As someone who's a biology major, who's supposed to go to medical school, who's supposed to be blah, 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 I just wish that I had told myself, like, there's really no supposed to. Like, do what you went to college, you are very lucky, you have so many things that are going your favor. There's no supposed to. Do what makes you happy and trust your gut and take each experience as it comes. And if you want to go to medical school, you end up going to medical school. If you don't want to go to medical school, it's really okay. I wish that I really stressed about the decision for no good reason. I knew that teaching was what I wanted to do. I knew that working 7 to 8 careers was exactly what I wanted to do. I just had a hard time admitting that to myself and admitting to people around me. There's lots of voices, and so and so I can be really choosy about who you're listening to and mostly trust your own gut. In terms of like what I wish I hadn't done, it's probably listening to take all of those voices that I heard who said things like, you're never going to go to medical school, or like, why would you go and teach, which is the most ridiculous thing anyone could ever say. If someone said that to you, you should all tell them that they're crazy, because teaching is the hardest job, a job that everyone should absolutely do if they are passionate about. But I wish that I had not spent as much time being stressed about those, like, is this one choice that I am making right now at this moment in my life going to impact it forever? The answer is probably yes, but like, that's okay. It's not going to be the only job I'm ever going to have. If I don't like it, I'll switch. If I don't like this, I'll switch. And I think really trying to have an understanding of, like, you are a product of your own experiences, and you just are. And so that means that no one else can do what you uniquely can do, because no one else has had that unique set of experiences. So I just spent a lot of time listening to other people as opposed to listening to myself and what I want to do.
One thing I would say is, just because you're good at it doesn't mean you should do it. So for a long time, I filled the very stereotypical female role on the set as the producer. And I was really good at it, but it meant that I wasn't being the director or the photographer or whatever. And you know, about 10 years ago, I was like, wait a second, maybe I can do that. And it took me a long time. You know, I just thought I was very intimidated. And so I kind of wish somebody had nudged me earlier on to not necessarily like slot into that kind of that role that is more predictable. And then I guess something I'm glad I did. I started out as an anthropologist, and I was working in Amazon, and I was writing these reports, and then I wasn't happy, and I really wasn't cut out. I was not a good writer, and it just wasn't amounting to anything. And documentary, I kept running across documentary crews, working, and I just stopped. And I got on a plane, and I went back to DC, and I just started over. So I think I encourage you, if something isn't resonating in your heart, just switch it up. You know, don't stay.
Thank you very much. So let's take some questions from all of you guys. And I think if you shout from where you are, it should work.
Hi, thank you guys for being here. It's been a real great panel. I have a question for Martha. So the idea of a chief creative officer makes me really curious, and I would just like to know what your day-to-day role is.
So it's pretty radical in the way that if you looked at the whiteboard this morning, it was everything from helping to design materials to support launching a new Pot Rouge for Bobbi Brown makeup counters, because the Pot Rouge sells for $27, and all proceeds go to our Girl Scholarship Fund. So we were trying to figure out the design of makeup counters and things like that. So that was one. A second is there's a nonprofit in India that in Rajasthan, and when a girl is born in that village, they plant 110 trees. So one of our ambassadors, actress Frida Pinto, called, and she's like, this organization means a lot, can we please do a social media support for that? So that was on the board. April 14th is the 1-year anniversary of the girls being kidnapped in Nigeria, so we're doing a global march on April 14th. It's called the School Girl March. So we're designing the avatars, the banners to help kind of unify the look of that global march. We're looking at scripts for the next chapter of Girl Rising. So it's mostly design that exists either on the back of a concert stage. We were designing a concert stage today too for an upcoming show. All the way over to, more boring stuff, like making sure that the letterhead that's translated into OG looks good.
It's a lot like my day. A lot like what I did today. I'm going to actually pass the question here to each of those.
You mentioned the way pottery can intersect with what you guys are working on. You just sort of mentioned, again, I'm an environmental studies major, so you mentioned the trees, getting things for children all board. How do you see other issues, environmental issues, issues with war, and stuff like that, intersecting with the issues of women's education?
So, well, it's more than an intersection. It's pretty much a full-blown collision. War, basically, the first victims of war tend to be girls in many ways. The population of refugee camps are higher for girls. If a family if they are down to their last few funds, they'll send their boy to school and keep the girl out. So it's war has a dramatic effect on girls' lives. In fact, we're just trying to deal with all the families displaced in northern Nigeria right now. So it's I'm not sure if I'm really answering your question. You were talking about environmental studies as well, right?
So how do you see the interaction with girls or STEM and how that might change the way the environment changes those certain areas of work. I'm really interested in environmental issues, really excited about the world around us and really through us more and that.
Sometimes we don't talk about this quite as much, but when you educate a girl in the developing world, crop yields go up and access to clean water goes up, and that ratio is not quite the same when you educate away. And that's not really the kind of message that we communicate at Girl Rising. But the truth is that the whole village benefits a bit more because their children are close by. They can't take off to the next town for that job. They're more rooted in their community. So anything in the environmental study, in the environmental space, tends to improve, hands down, when you start educating your girls. So it's an amazing, it's not a silver bullet, but it is an issue, it is a solution that has unified much of the environmental movement across the world.
And I think from the STEM education perspective, I mean, so first of all, I agree with everything is interrelated. And so when you have students who are coming to school hungry, they're not going to learn as well. When you have kids who are not on regular treatment for asthma and they miss 45 days of school a year, they are not going to have the same outcomes that someone else who is there all the time might. When you have mothers who are in stress before they give birth, there are stresses that happen to the baby that then can have implications for how kids learn. So the intersection of health, the environment, like it really is a true ecosystem in that way. And I view education as being able to have some really important implications. And when we educate our girls, and particularly thinking about the impact of STEM education, when you start to think about when every kid is able to have the problem-solving skill set where they look at a challenge that they want to solve because it's meaningful to them. So for them, it might be some sort of environmental challenge that they're observing. Or in seventh grade, we did like a human impact on the environment unit, and my kids all just totally wanted to fix everything that they saw around them. And it's incredible what kids come up with. And so if you provide them with that skill set, that they're then able to do something, design something, create something, build a campaign, start an advocacy group of their own, really helping them to empower their own voices. I think really incredible things are possible, and it will have implications for everything that we do.
I feel like right now there's more progress being made and more momentum in the fields of public education in the U.S. or educating women around the world than in the past, and if so, why is that momentum happening right now?
So it definitely depends region by region. I mean, there's more girls now enrolled in Afghanistan than have ever been enrolled in school before. And we hope to be launching in Pakistan, and 50% of women in Pakistan today have never been to school, which is a crazy statistic. So the fact that the grassroots community, education community in Pakistan is really uniting and coming together in preparation for launching these new initiatives is a first. So I think it's, again, for the most part, very, very positive. Great advances are being made, but we certainly have a very long way to go.
And from the domestic side, I mean, I feel older and older, but I have not been in the world of education for that long, so I don't know if I can make big, broad, sweeping statements about how there is a lot. But it does feel like there are quite a number of changes that are happening to the education system here between standard new teacher evaluation systems, a new accreditation system for teacher preparation program. There are a lot of changes that over the past few years have sort of come to be. And so I think that is making national press, for better or worse. I also probably have a selection bias where I read about STEM education all the time. So I feel like there's lots of things happening, and the time is totally now. And but I also kind of love that feeling, even if that's not really the case, because it gets me super motivated, and then other people super motivated, and then I actually believe that we can change something because we believe that it's possible and there is momentum and people are paying attention. So what I have seen is a move towards these like coalitions and people moving to work together who might not traditionally have worked together before. And I love that. And I'm very excited about the direction that is taking and what might be possible as a result. Jessica, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks again for coming to share. I'm just curious, I know both of your types of work or organization are very, I think, mission focused or have a mission or a purpose that you're driving towards. Just curious of what the biggest challenge or biggest need is in those areas to see your mission through fruition even greater.
Funding. Because we basically have will of the people on our side now. And I say our, just collective people of the world. And even most fathers and brothers and uncles in the communities that I work in, they will just raise their hand and like, we want to send our daughters to school. Can you just tell us why? Because we don't have a safe way for her to get there. But we'd love to send her. So a lot of people think that girls are missing from classrooms because they have somebody telling them at home that they're not allowed to go. But basically, for the most part, there's some practical things on the ground that need to happen just to guarantee their space there. So for us right now, people are starting to identify what needs to happen, and they're figuring out how to work together. But the governments need to prioritize the spending in support of this. And I was just at the White House a couple of weeks ago and listened to words from the president and the first lady that I was shocked to hear. And for the first time, they announced Let Girls Learn, which is the prioritization of girls' education, where the entire Peace Corps is going to be kind of see development through the lens of girls' education. So it's starting to change, but our biggest problem really is getting the funding so that we can actually do the things that everybody now is agreeing needs to be done.
And when you think about the vision of Teach for America, of every kid having the opportunity to obtain an excellent education, I think there are a couple of things. I think, particularly from the lens of STEM education, talent is still, it's very hard, as I mentioned, even in the middle of New York City, to find people who have STEM backgrounds or passionate about STEM content knowledge, who can teach, and who are interested in the teaching. And so talent is still a constraint, particularly for STEM education. And then I do think that funding impacts our schools, and it impacts our kids and what they have access to and what they don't, and which school gets a computer science after-school club and which one doesn't get a robotics program, and all those sorts of things. So I would say that funding for public education will always be in terms of trying to prioritize and figure out where it should go and how to best spend it and all those sorts of things. I just don't think. I'll be honest, I don't think we ever spend enough on kids. They're worth so much, and I would spend every dollar that I had on trying to make every school an amazing place of learning for kids. But talent is also a big piece of it.
So this is an interesting divergence for me. I'm an MBA student, and I recently got appointed to the board for next year of the Graduate Women in Business Club at Marshall. And I look around the room and I see 5 or 6 males here, and we're here talking about women in education. So I'm just wondering, how do we connect with men on issues of women in education or women in business with struggles? Here's your thoughts.
So for us, I mean, the title of our campaign contains the word girl in it. But if you look at our branding and everything, you usually see a big GR. And you won't see any pink, and you won't see any slender, dainty fonts or anything like that for exactly what you're talking about. And then we never lead our discussion by saying educating girls is the right thing to do, or let's end the subjugation of girls. We never kind of lead from a human rights point of view, even though that's all true. We try to start with a place that anybody can buy in, especially men. So, and that traditionally has been, if you are the head of NASDAQ, who is one of our partners, or Caterpillar, as I was mentioning, if you're talking to India, for example, and you say, do you want to compete with China? Well, you can't until you fold in half of your workforce. And so we try to really talk about the economies of it. We talk about improving global security, global stability, and we try to keep it in the space where men won't be like, oh great, it's that girl issue. And that's done pretty well for us.
And I think from our perspective too, I mean, yes, our vision is much broader than girls' education. And so we talk about our vision as, wanting to make sure that every kid has access to a great education. And so trying to be as inclusive as possible there. So I think there's a lot of things to be done, and I think it comes back to something we were talking about earlier around understanding the perspectives of others, and if we brand things in certain ways that might attract, different groups or exclude other groups, and so how can we be as inclusive as possible, because it is a conversation that impacts everyone. One of my favorite quotes that I heard recently was, diversity is the key to innovation, and I deeply believe that. And that means diversity in every way. It means gender, it means race, it means socioeconomic status, but if we truly want to be innovative in our approaches, we have to have a diversity of perspectives and diversity of backgrounds present in anything that we do. So trying to think about that as we go forward in the conversation.
I have a question. You mentioned that with Girl Rights, and you have, talked and reached out to a lot of different companies and big players out there, like NASDAQ, for example, Caterpillar, like you mentioned. And I was wondering how, through your relationship with these, companies, these big, powerful people, have you talked about, social responsibility in some way? Because a lot of times it's these forces of capitalism that are exploiting these women in underdeveloped countries. And you see, for example, with Caterpillar, right, it's profiting off of the genocide of Palestinian people. And so I was just do you have a platform where you can discuss with these companies? A lot of to put it simply, the destruction they're reaping, in the lives of these women. I don't know. I just feel it's very important to address the systemic forces behind poverty, and I feel the exploitation of women through capitalism is a huge one.
So I'm not sure, I do want to tell you that we haven't signed a deal with Caterpillar, so I haven't vetted them, but we do, when a company comes to us, we do vet them. So we had a number of banks that we've had to take a close look at. Mattel called us up, and they said, Barbie's moving out of Malibu, and she's moving to India, and can we do that with you? And we're like, no. And they're like, why not? I'm like, well, because our feet are still stuck in a high heel position, that's why. So we are, what you're raising is a profoundly important point. And we try to make the best decisions along the way. I will say that last night I had dinner with a number of people from Saudi Arabia who potentially have some major dollars to contribute. And that was a moment where you just sit there and think, oh my gosh, where is this coming from? But then the people across the table could not be more committed to seeing equal rights for women across the Middle East. So it gets very, very complicated. And I think you just have to take, when we have an advisory board, everything has to get passed by. We do collective decision making. Nobody stands out there and is like, yeah, let's do that. And we carefully vet so that we don't, end up in a place where we realize we're working with somebody who we don't feel comfortable with. Does that answer?
Quickly, I just wanted to say thank you again to Melissa and Martha for sharing your really insightful and inspiring example. And thank you, Abby, for leading discussion. Such a great question. So you have a few gifts for each of you.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
Thank you. I don't know what to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah, so on that note, we still have a little bit of time if you want to, talk one-on-one with our speakers, or feel free to mingle a little bit. And I think just end it with one more round of applause to say thank you.